Welcome everyone to the peer review community call. We're just waiting for Sunslinger to hop on and give us the scoop. You all have given a lot of great feedback in the recent weeks and days on peer review, and all of you have put a lot of thought into where it's going. So there've been some changes, and that's all been incorporated. So we have Sunslinger here, who is going to give you all the scoop. Hey, DJ. How are you doing?
Hey, sorry about that. Had some trouble. I had to restart everything, but looks like we're almost good. Give people one more minute and then hop in.
Awesome. In the meantime, I'll start dropping links in our chat for this community call. I'll give you all a link to drop your wallet address to claim some X-Metric for being amazing and being here live today. And this is a form that's only active when we're live, and we close it shortly after. So be sure to drop your wallet address so we can send you some X-Metric today.
All right, let's get to it. Marina, you want to screen share for me? And we'll pull up the new rubric if you have it handy. I can do it if not.
We are on stage though, so it doesn't allow us to screen share, unfortunately.
Okay, yes. Yes, you told me this. I had forgotten or intentionally forgotten that Discord has yet to update its stages. Okay, so in that case, I've got a link to drop for everybody, and while I do that, just going to talk through, review a tiny bit. New season, so we've changed the way we do community calls a little bit. On Mondays, we still have our weekly team meeting, as we did yesterday, and anyone who wants to can weigh in on that, can listen to that, and that's for team business. But we wanted to keep these calls as well to talk about important topics, and review is always an important topic. So we are making a bunch of changes based on feedback that we got last season, and we wanted to talk through some of them and also about where things were going. So as usual, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. But otherwise, we'll get right into it. Awesome. That's neat, Marina. How are you making that work?
I did not know Discord could do it yet, but apparently
that's really cool.
That's my bet. I'm
awesome.
sharing.
So what we're looking at is a rubric that took into account a number of conversations we had about how do we get reviews done with the app. The app is live. Some of you have probably used it already. If you haven't, definitely check it out. But it does change to some degree the review process in a couple key ways. The first is that in general, we'll go beyond having 3 reviewers. And secondly, you can, in the app, define what set you want to review. So what network, what group of people. So we have review networks that are forming, saying, hey, pick me. I want my group of reviewers to review. Here are my qualifications. And we're going to test out using those review networks in addition to the existing Samurai and X-Metric masters that we have, with the idea that some of them are going to be specialists, some of them are going to be experts. So that's one big thing. As those networks expand, we're going to share more information about them and how to join. If you want to make one, make one. Let me know who's in it. I'll get you badges, and we'll test out having your group of people be reviewers. Over time, hopefully, we'll continue to get expertise in key areas. There might be a Solana review network. There might be a review network that specializes in SQL and specifically looks at the code for given dashboards. So networks are a big part of how we envision things forming in the future. But we also wanted to give those networks guidance, and so we've changed up the rubric. I'm going to give a little bit of history on the old rubric just so people know how we got here. It was 12 points. I wrote the baseline with my brother, who is a high school teacher in the United States. It took us about 45 minutes, and we based it on the rubric that he used for his high school students. So it worked great because it was simple. That is about the only thing it has going for it, and I can say that because I wrote it, or we wrote it. We never intended for it to last almost 2 years, which it did. We do think, or at least I think, that the categories that it laid out, completeness, accuracy, insights, methodology, all that jazz, is still important and right for dashboards, but 12 points, is sort of right in the middle. I did a little bit of design theory last night. Actually, I talked with an expert and we were talking through it. And 12 is too many categories for the human brain to easily grasp, but it's not enough points to really let people get specific about the variation between two great dashboards, for example. So the new system is much simpler, but it also allows for more customization. 5-point scale, the bottom one being spam or plagiarism, and the top one being stellar. And we've additionally provided a rubric that assumes that everyone will start at 100 points. And you can quickly, as a reviewer, or when you're preparing your own submission, deduct points from that 100, and that will help you, as a rule of thumb, understand what bucket you're going to be in. Broadly speaking, it should be much faster to assign a grade of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So it should be, there's always been this tension between, well, I had a 7 and it should have been an 8, or I had an 8 and it should have been a 9. And it takes a lot of reviewer time to go back into it. And people do occasionally grade something a shade too low or a shade too high. There's always been the possibility for dispute. It's much harder to dispute that something is a 4 versus a 5 or a 3 versus a 4. It'll happen. There will still be those cases. But in general, the rubric as we provided it should make it really easy to say what bucket something actually genuinely falls into, and much easier for re-reviews to go through and say, here's where this falls. Now, we're going to continue experimenting with payouts so that, for example, do all submissions within the same bucket get paid the same? We're still working on what that's going to look like in the app. We're also looking at how each bucket is paid relative to everything else. Those are going to be things that we can tweak, and the team is already at work on different types of payment curves. But broadly speaking, we thought that a scale of 5 would be better and truer to life, and we provided a litany of options or background information that you can use as you go through a submission to figure out where it falls. It penalizes some things pretty heavily. If you get wrong answers, for example, if you're copying and pasting large groups of text. So the thing I wanted to get across before we look more deeply at the rubric, and Marina, maybe if you want to just drop the link in here since it's still not showing for me or not loading, then at least people will have access to it in chat. Thank you very much. The thing that matters most is still get a great submission. It's not debate over minutia. There's going to be more minutia to debate over if you want, but in general, this should be fairly comprehensive. It is not written in stone. It's going to change. We'll take feedback. All of that is still going to happen. It's still, at the end of the day, is about doing great work and then publicizing it as much as you can on Twitter. Those things are going to be what drive results. So we are welcome to take feedback on the rubric, but don't think that just because it's written here, it's going to be like the definitive forever. This is it. No, it's still evolving. It's still changing. So let me take a pause for comments, and then we'll take a look at the rubric in detail, and then we'll go through a submission. Free Martian was kind enough to say, hey, you can go through a submission on a community call. And so we'll do these teardowns to talk about given submissions, and people can use that for us to show everybody, hey, here's how this submission looks. Here's how we'd improve it. It's another opportunity for people to get feedback. So let me pause there. Let me see if anybody has got questions or comments or anything like that. We'll take a minute, and then we'll go through a submission, and we'll go through the rubric live. A couple of people typing, so we'll give them a sec to get those across. While we wait for those, Marina, did I miss anything that you really want to add?
Nothing at all on the how it came together and why. I really appreciated the lore of the first rubric. Actually, did not know how it came together
Yeah,
with you and your brother. That's so cool.
yeah. I'll
I
add.
wonder.
Go ahead.
Go. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was wondering and if that's too early, then just let me know. But um, if you can talk about how it's going to be implemented, especially kind of the good and great stage, or if that's kind of still in the works.
Yeah, still in the works, but here's the takeaway that I think we're moving towards. And this is the part that some people are going to love and some people are going to hate. So we encourage debate on it. But I think what we're going to end up working towards is that submissions that are goods and greats get detailed review, as in we're going to encourage reviewers to take a second look at those. I should say great and stellar. Stellar is still the top of the heap. We're going to encourage reviewers to take a look at those and provide detailed feedback and lavish their time on that. And we're going to encourage reviewers as well to not spend a ton of time if it falls on a 1, 2, or 3. Here's the reason. If you get a 1, 2, or 3, then there are going to be some clear and obvious things based on the rubric that you didn't do that you can correct. It doesn't make a ton of sense to go in depth and provide feedback on why it was a 2 and not a 3. You can just go back, look at the rubric, see what you did wrong, and if necessary, ask for help to get to the next stage. At the top end, we want reviewers to be able to look at, varied and interesting, diverse submissions so they don't burn out. And we want to really be able to spend time providing that feedback to help people understand I had a 4 and not a 5. So it's better for reviewers. They don't have to really in-depth grade 80 submissions or 70 or 90 submissions, which people have complained about, and rightly so. And it also gives us some more resources, the ability to spend time and money on helping people, really just get to that top tier. So what that means in practice, everyone is still going to get a score, but we're anticipating that reviewers will be able to go very quickly through submissions that are not great. And instead of spending 20 to 25 minutes on average for every single submission, which is what the average has been so far, we'll encourage people to spend that time, provide comments. And so if you're in that, great or stellar bucket, you should be able to ask for more feedback from the community pod, from reviewers, from the education team. We're still figuring out exactly how that's going to look. But that will help you improve your submissions at the top end. And then the rubric will also make it very easy for reviewers just to fly through a larger number of submissions more quickly without sacrificing that much accuracy. They should still be ending up in the right bucket. If not, we'll take a look at it. That's something that we're working toward. We're still continuing to add more volume through the app to test the review process. But as I said, welcome feedback on that. It means not every submission gets the same level of review. We think that will be better for reviewers. We think that will be better for submissions that put in enough work to actually merit somebody really taking a look at them. And then if you're not there, we've provided some pretty clear instructions as to why you'll be losing points. And that should make it a lot easier to tighten up. Let me hit some of the questions in chat really quick. So yes, you can lose deductions multiple times. There's a cap of 25. So also to be clear, and this is something that people pointed out, this is not incredibly comprehensive in that not every single thing you could possibly do right or wrong is listed here. We want reviewers to have discretion. As things emerge, we may add to this, as I've said, but yes, you can be deducted multiple times for professionalism. You can only lose a maximum of the points listed per category. So if by some strange twist you were to get 0 points in professionalism, but do everything else perfectly, you could still end up with a good submission. You'd have 75 points, and that's where it would put you. I don't know how that would happen. That would be super weird. I don't know, maybe if you did like a submission in Crayon or something like that, but it used data, it cited its sources, and it was perfect. I don't know. that is still hypothetically possible. In terms of factors like loading time, location, availability, we actually note this specifically. We ask reviewers to see if a bunch of people are saying, oh, my dashboards are slow to load, then maybe that's an issue with Dune or Flipside or whatever. We're asking people to exercise reasonable judgment. But I'll also say, like, this is kind of how the world works. If someone can't load it when they're trying to look at it, then occasionally, yes, that will be a Flipside problem or a Dune problem, Nansen, Covalent, whoever the data provider is. For the most part, it is still your responsibility to write things that are going to perform in the vast majority of cases. So performant queries are a different issue than, okay, I can't load the dashboard at all. We will ask reviewers to be lenient and basically come back and look at it a second time later on if they can't open it altogether. But in terms of queries performing, that is something that is generally on you to be able to control. We will work with people wherever possible as well. And if there are multiple dashboards that are all running into the same problem, then we've asked reviewers to make a note for the bounty bunch, hey, a bunch of dashboards are having trouble loading. Is there an issue with the data providers? So that's how we'll tackle that. We'll see how that goes. On the topic of 15 minutes reviewing a dashboard, so here again, not every dashboard should be getting a really intense deep dive. If someone is making basic mistakes on professionalism or having it be way too long or having like large blocks of text that are copied from somebody else's documents or plagiarism, God forbid, then it doesn't make sense to spend a ton of time digging into, is the code for that submission also correct or incorrect? You got to fix the basic things first. So yeah, there's going to be a distribution here. Some submissions you'll be able to look at and say in a minute or two, this is a 2 or this is a 3. That's what this is designed to do. For 4s or 5s, we want people to feel the freedom to spend more time than 15 minutes if they need to really dig into it. But if you're not getting the basic stuff right, it's not fair to ask reviewers to also be spending a ton of time diving into every single aspect of your submission until everything reaches a baseline level of quality. Yeah, in terms of grammar and spelling, I agree with Marina here. And this is not a rule that I set. And as someone who has been at least conversant in 3 or 4 languages in addition to English, I know it's extremely difficult to do, but you're going to have to use Grammarly or have somebody look at it. This is just an unfortunate fact of crypto. It's still dominated, or at least the analytics firms are dominated by English speakers. Twitter outside of China, is largely English dominated. To really do work at a professional level and get people to hire you, it's got to be flawless or close to flawless in terms of spelling and grammar. That it just is what it is. So whether that's tapping one of the existing reviewer networks and even spending a little money potentially, say, hey, or asking a friend or a group of friends or me or Marina or whoever, say, hey, do you notice any spelling or grammar mistakes? That's one path up the mountain, but I think the better one is use tools. There are browser tools out there, there's ChatGPT out there, Grammarly, that can very quickly help you make those edits. Ollie T, yes, we're going to post the video. I'm going to share it. I'm also going to, every single week, post this reviewer link as well as the rubric and encourage reviewers to take a look at this video and really look at the rubric in depth. There's going to be some adaptation. There always is. If there's interest, and I will know there's interest by people saying, hey, GJ, I'm interested, then I am happy to run specific reviewer training sessions, as many as it takes to get this right. We're not expecting everybody to show up to this, obviously, but I am more than happy to continue training reviewers on what this means and what the implications are. Other questions? Marina, let's go through and talk about some specific categories, and then we'll go through and talk about the teardown. Cool. Scroll up for me for just a sec. Down a little bit, just to the points table. Cool. So scoring scale. The scoring scale is meant to be applied. This is part of the video we'll hope people will like bookmark and come back to. It's got the old system. It's got a scale from 90 to 100. We are not currently planning on saying a 93 is better than a 91 at the moment. At the moment, the payment curve will be averaging out your scale on 1 to 5. The score range allows for different combinations and level of granularity. I'll repeat this because it bears repeating. We're not saying a 93 gets a higher score than a 91. The numeric system here is meant to let you quickly take off points and determine what bucket you end up in. So this goes back to the days where, all good submissions within a range are, there's not necessarily going to be that much difference between a 78 and a 76 or an 80 and a 78. Over time, that may change. We may introduce more payment curves that weight you more highly. That is not the plan at the moment. So the way the scoring system is meant to work, and we've talked about rounding down, getting the floor, etc. We won't know until we get more data. That's the long and the short of it. Got to try it first, see how it works, and then make tweaks as necessary. Also add, no system is perfect. It's never been perfect. Way back before I think anybody on this call was doing bounties, it was a system of 1, 2, or 3. That's what we started with back like in 2 years ago, pretty much, almost exactly 2 years ago, actually. Then we moved to a system of 12. The system of 12, we had a bunch of people getting 12s and one was getting, top score. So we did gold, silver, bronze. I would tip people out of the tip jar occasionally for work that I felt was really good. Yeah, long time. It's never been perfect. It never will be. We're hoping that this gives reviewers more tools in their toolbox and helps analysts know what they have to improve on. We encourage more feedback, but know the only way we can make things better is with your feedback and based on data. So that said, let's scroll down to how you actually use the scoring scale. We've got the same categories. This is not perfectly comprehensive, as I said, but it gives you an easy way to take points off and get people into the right buckets and to do it fairly quickly. There's a lot of text here. It's actually not all that hard to apply. We are not expecting everyone to look at every single SQL query either, but for every error that you find, that's 10 points. So, 1 or 2 errors, you can still survive. But if you've got a bunch of errors, yeah, it's going to tank your submission. So at the point where you look at someone's SQL and they've got a couple errors, maybe that's enough. Maybe move on. I'm not going to be dogmatic if people want to spend time looking at every single query. The broader point here is we grade fairly harshly for wrong queries. That is what it is. We also grade pretty harshly for duplicated graphs. If you have a pie chart, if you have a bar chart that are saying the same thing, unless you're making a case that showing the exact same data 2 different ways is necessary, and you can make that case, and we expect reviewers to take that into account, we're going to penalize people for just chart spam or chart flood. Shock, maybe you could be a little more specific. I don't know what you mean by a full scorecard. A little more color on that would be helpful. Comments on the new app. I will check on that one, Zaki. That's a good question. We'll keep going here. We drew a line at 20 for charts and graphs. Here again, if you feel you need more than 20, just make the case, add a paragraph, make it easy for reviewers to find. We are expecting reviewers to read those comments and act accordingly. In other words, we originally had 10. People pushed back and said 10 is not nearly enough. They made a good case. I said, okay, we're going to pick 20. It could have been 30. There's an arbitrary line here we had to draw somewhere. So again, we're expecting reviewer judgment to trump what's written here. But in general, 20, if you can't get across your point with 20 graphs, are you really going to be able to get it across with 25? Maybe. We'll find out. We'll see when people start coming in with submissions. For now, try your best to stick to 20. And the penalties are fairly mild for going beyond that. So if you really think it's going to boost your insight section, you can do that and lose a couple points and still end up in the same bucket and not have it affect you all that much. The 15-minute thing, here again, we're expecting this to be somewhat controversial, but you should be able to figure out if it's good or great or stellar or bad or spam quickly based on this rubric. And then we expect to lavish time once we've got all the tools in place to do it on the upper end of the scale, and really differentiate why was something good and not stellar. We're happy to lavish time on that. We're not going to spend a lot of time. We're not going to ask reviewers to spend a lot of time on something that doesn't load or something that's got 50 charts, and it's 10 different actual insights sliced and diced 5 different ways, or the grammar's wrong, or there's big chunks that are copied right at the start saying Ethereum is it's 2 years in. We expect people to know what Ethereum is, what optimism is, what arbitrism is. Link to the docs. That's fine. We don't want to have to make people read through. Where if everything is, I didn't write this down, if everything is orange, and it's super hard on a reviewer to actually process, like, we're not then expecting that reviewer to spend a ton of time diving deep into the submission. Yeah, Wyshak, I'm still not quite understanding what you're asking for. What you've laid out here is kind of what we've done. So there's something I'm missing. Maybe you can provide a little more info here. Just to be clear as well, on this insight section, if somebody writes a tweet thread or writes an article, we're not counting that in a 15-minute limit. And we're also not telling reviewers you have to spend 15 minutes on everything. We're not saying you have to spend 1 on everything. If you're just skimming, odds are your reviews are not going to be perfect, and that's going to show up as over time. But we are expecting people to fairly quickly be able to deduct points, get to the right bucket, and then move on. Oh, how can an analyst know the breakdown? Okay, I wasn't quite getting that. We're still going back and forth on this, but my point of view is no, I don't think that makes sense at the moment. I do think that makes sense through the community review process. I think if you look at a submission and you genuinely think it's a 4, or maybe early on, you should be able to go through the community review process, do this for somebody else, and then have them do it for you. We are not expecting it to be part of the main review process. We are hoping that it'll be part of the community review process. So if you want that type of granularity, do it for somebody else, get a golden ticket, and then someone else will do it for you. And then I think the other exception would be, again, like, if in the early stages, while we're still figuring this out, you get a 4 and you don't know why it's not a 5, post that, and then we'll pay priority attention to that. I want to be really clear here. There's been a lot of reviewer feedback saying, like, I don't have time. It doesn't make sense to go in depth on every single submission. We're going to try that. We're going to listen to it. We know everybody wants feedback on everything. That's valuable. We also know people want to get paid faster, and we know that people want to feel like their submissions are being reviewed fairly relative to their peers. It's hard to do all those things. We are trying a new approach to prioritize the people who are putting in a ton of time on their submissions, that they're getting the feedback that they need, rather than trying to give 15 or 20-minute reviews to everybody. That's expensive. It takes away money that we could be paying analysts. It takes away money we could be paying threads that people are working hard on. It takes away money we could be paying top submissions. So we are constrained by money. We're also constrained by reviewer time and attention. And that feedback has been really clear. People don't want to grade 60, 70, 80 submissions and have 60 of them be mediocre. That takes a toll on time and attention. It makes people not want to review. We've got to solve for that. Threshold on number of reviews received. Zaki, I don't quite get what you're saying. You mind reframing for me? And Marina, if you want to scroll down a little bit, that would be good too.
How's this?
Yeah, that's better.
And I wonder if Zaki was asking what happens when or if a submission does not receive enough reviews or very few reviews in the app, I'm assuming.
That's a great question. Zaki, I would put that in app feedback. It's something that we're actually discussing as a team, how to figure out what happens. But this is a good one where we want to actually see what happens in practice. I agree with you. That's something that we should solve for. Your feedback will help me prioritize that. Yeah, that's a good one. That's an important one. Bunch of typing. I want to see what other stuff is coming up. Yeah, one thing we obviously wanna look out for, and I don't think this is particularly likely the way things are designed. We don't want something to have 20 or 30 reviews, so I know that's being worked on, but the minimum is a good question. That actually reminds me, I'm gonna share some bug fix with you guys in a sec. We were working on this. Let's see. We did change one of the things that might have sparked the questions. We changed our pagination, our page structure. So before it was hiding some submissions that wouldn't have reviewers. That's the type of thing where like we'll just need to fix it. You know, if there's an issue where some submissions aren't getting reviewed because they're not getting seen, then that's a bug fix, and we might go back in as a bounty bunch and give them a second set of reviews. We don't want to be unfair when it's stuff like that. That said, I would encourage everybody on this call, we did push a fix to pages, so if there are submissions that has 0 reviews, go ahead and hit them up, review them. And we do want to see if there's something that's consistently causing submissions to get fewer reviews than they should. That might be something we need to fix. What incentive do reviewers have for doing a good job? We'll do that first and community review second. The obvious one is if you do a bad job, we won't select you for future reviews. This is part of the thing that the app is going to be able to handle. We can determine, and so can anyone who's establishing submissions. If you do a good job, you'll get selected for review more often. Or your reviewer network. We have reviewer networks that are getting set up, the Watchmen, the Eager Beavers, a couple others. We will track over time how those review networks do. And the ones that do better are going to get more opportunities to review, and the ones that don't simply won't. There will be a bunch of submissions that are open to everybody. We are going to start with that. But especially for this process that I've described that we're hoping to get to, where good and stellar submissions get more reviews, that review process should be fairly enjoyable. It'll be reviewing good submissions. There'll be fewer of them. It should, on average, and don't hold me to this because I haven't run the math, but on average, well, that's not true. I ran the math. I haven't run it for every edge case. So with those caveats aside, should get paid better than reviewing currently does. So getting selected to really take a look at those good and stellar submissions should be interesting. It should get you exposure to great submissions. It should pay reasonably well. And we are going to be keeping an eye on people who are just not putting in any work at all. And that will, bear fruit when it comes to select those reviewer networks to review different sets of submissions again in the future. We are also, and this is, we're not there yet, but it's something that the Bounty Bunch will be discussing this week, talking about moving to paying per submission rather than per hour. We'll hopefully try that. And then if you can effectively read something and grade it in 2 minutes, and if your grades are accurate, that's fine. You'll get paid more. But to do that, you need to be able to look at SQL quickly and know, is it correct or it's not? You're going to need to be fairly fluent with this rubric. You're going to need to be able to read quickly. You'll need to know a submission or an ecosystem well enough to know whether the submissions in it are accurate or not. All of that takes work. If you can do that, then all power to you. There was a point back in the Terra days when I was extremely quick at grading Terra submissions because I had read 2,000 submissions and I was living and breathing it. So I would have someone else check the SQL because it wasn't my strong suit for something that looked off. And then for the rest of it, I could look at it and say, this is right, this is not right, this doesn't make sense with the stats that we've seen. You get to that point where you can do it quickly, but it takes work to get to that point. So being able to grade submissions quickly, that's fine. If you end up doing that and people are like, man, my submissions are consistently getting dragged down, I'll look at it. And if someone is consistently giving way too lousy grades or just grading everything a 5 out of 5, that will show up in our stats. Don't do that. Don't be that person who makes me pick you out of a lineup and say, you were just cheating the process. No one is going to enjoy that. But we welcome people applying their own frameworks and rules of thumb to see how effectively they can do it. It should end up where submissions get very quickly loaded into buckets, and then we can look at the top buckets in more depth. Yeah, Mark Q, you will note above and beyond does not exist on this rubric. We have struck that from the official record, at least for the moment. I have also explicitly added some italic text here about the 15-minute limit applying to dashboards only and not to articles. So I hear you, buddy. If it happens, if a reviewer is saying taking points off for not going above and beyond, that is not listed on this rubric. There is a bonus points section where if your work is interesting, if you write a good thread, if it looks really good, that can make up for some mistakes. So you can still get a stellar submission even with some errors, or even if you spell some things wrong. If you're putting stuff out there, that's cool. If it does well on Twitter, if it's interesting, if it's got a thread, a certain amount of creativity and flair and extra effort and insights does make up for some errors. And we wanted to explicitly, leave that option open for folks. Set up a weekly call for reviewers and maybe hand out pointers or reiterate and maybe distribute X metric. Yeah, we're not going to do it probably every week. We are going to do it every other week. We will strongly encourage reviewers to come to that. Because I can't necessarily control who shows up on a community call, I can't promise that, but we are going to do a dashboard teardown every single week, like the one we're about to do, where we'll go through a dashboard, and ideally it'll be a dashboard where someone feels like that they've been, badly misgraded. We'll take a look at reviewer feedback, we'll go through it ourselves, and that'll be a good, way to hold all of us accountable to, did the reviewer screw up, or is this a problem with the rubric? Or is it fair? And, just going through it shows that it's fair. Do you plan to have more bounties in the apps? Yes, absolutely. We are scaling that up over time. The more we scale it up, the more we will continue to push for this effectively. Why does adding 8 points for no mistakes? A bit of an inside joke. But think of that as it's flawless. Like, I graded it. I couldn't find anything wrong with it. There were no spelling mistakes. Like, all the data is accurate. We wanted to give something for being comprehensive. So some people are really methodical. We want a reward for that. If you're doing work that is truly flawless, extra points. And that feels right to me from a professional setting as well, right? There should be, most employers will forgive you a spelling mistake here or there, or something where an access is cut off or whatever. We want to reward people who truly do work that is impeccable, that's flawless. I'm not sure how you're getting to 100. Yeah, so this is what I said before. There's not going to be a difference in how much you get paid for 108 versus 100, but that 8 points could make up for you cited somebody else's query, you got someone else's query, you credited it, but the reviewer missed it, and then we go back and it's in the code. Like, you want, when you credit something, it should be really clear for someone who's skimming where it comes from, but we know people are going to say, hey, I got this query, I put a comment in it, that shouldn't be plagiarism, I did credit my sources. We want to find some middle ground for that. Now, if you are ripping off someone's dashboard and not giving them credit at all, plagiarism, automatic fail, that's not going to work. But That 8 points could make up for, oh, I'm still in the habit of, I got a full description of Arbitrum. I put it on my dashboard. I lost 5 points for that because we don't want to see recycled text. But everything else is perfect. So that should, make up for that. It gives you a little bit of buffer. Other questions? Marina, anything that you'd like to add, and then we'll spend the rest of the time going through Teardown.
All good for me.
Okay, then what I'm going to do is drop a dashboard. If you can pull that up and share that, that would be great, and we'll give everybody else a second to read it and form some opinions, and then we'll go through it. And I'm going to take a minute to plug in because I have neglected to do that, and I don't want to run out of charge.
All right, I've got the dashboard up on the screen. Here's an example actually. I was opening this up in Brave browser and it was just not loading in Flipside. So I popped up another browser and I opened it there and it worked. So just a quick I guess demonstration of what happens, the 15-minute rule, and just kind of a quick due diligence sanity check whether it's actually an opening. In some cases this is enough, and this kind of helps clear up the doubt. Here it is. It works on a different browser.
And we have put, at Marina's fine suggestion, that information directly in the rubric. We're expecting reviewers to put in a minimal amount of effort, which is basically try it in another browser, drop a quick comment, see if anybody else can open it or is having trouble opening it, but not to spend more time on that. Plagiarized submissions. Good question. They still fail. They lose all the points. If it's minor versus major, we're still figuring out. I think the way it's listed, if it's, any instance of plagiarism where it's clearly copying code directly, even if it's just for one query, minus 100 points, automatic fail. That's fairly harsh. But honestly, the feedback from the community broadly has been in that direction. So we are not currently banning people for a single offense. We are in the process of, banning someone for multiple offenses. So Bounty Bunch will figure out, is that a 1 month ban or is it a permanent ban? But do it once, the dashboard fails altogether. It doesn't get paid anything at all. Do it more than once, you're likely to incur a ban, whether for a period of time or altogether. Are people going to make new accounts? Yeah, probably. It's crypto. It happens. But for networks for marketplaces that are gated to a specific network, as in you can only claim challenges where you meet a certain set of criteria, new accounts won't meet that. So if you're an established bounty hunter, then you stand to miss out on being able to even claim some questions by plagiarizing. So don't do it. Wrongly tagged as plagiarized. This does come up occasionally. Those cases are rare enough that I'm willing to handle them case by case. And yes, we're trying to share the free Martian dashboard. Patrick, are you not able to see it? Elvis, I'm not quite sure what you mean by self-copy, but if you mean self-plagiarism. Oh, Marina's got it. Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same thing. Okay, so, and Patrick, just to make sure, you're not able to see what Marina's got on screen. Just confirming that so we can do a little bit of post. Okay, is anyone else not seeing a screen share? Let us know in the comments. Okay, Wash, I can't see it. A bunch of people cannot see it. Okay, that's good to know. So What I'm going to do then is just drop the link one more time so people can follow along on the side. And then in the recording, if I'm understanding Patrick correctly, we can slice that back in, because I'm able to see it just fine. So we'll have to figure out why some people can see it and others cannot. But everybody should be able to open this and follow along on their side as well. So with our remaining 10 minutes, I'd intended to leave some more time for that, but some really good questions, good call outs around what if it doesn't load, what should we expect reviewers to do, around some reviewer training as well. Let's go through this. Right off the bat, why don't you delegate your voting power to a delegatee? That's an interesting one. That's an edge case. I don't think delegatee is a word in English, but it does follow a standard sort of English convention. I wouldn't take any points off for that personally. Others may vary. Other than that, immediately I look at the introduction. It's original. It's not someone just copying what is Ave. I give credits for the ghosts. If I were grading this, I probably wouldn't, add points for aesthetics just yet, but very clearly labeled introduction, big text. It uses tabs. Each of them has different colors. If it sticks like this, I might consider giving additional points for aesthetics. So let's keep scrolling. What are you going to learn about? First of all, the U is, overcapitalized. It shouldn't be. Making a note of that. It does lay out specifically what are we going to learn. That's clear. That's great. So if I look at the rubric, I'm looking for things to take points off for. I'm just also talking aloud about things that I'm noticing as I do this. But if I were going to grade this via the rubric, I'm looking for ways to deduct points. So with that in mind, we'll keep going. Scroll down. We've got methodology here. That's good. Still easy to read. Keep scrolling, keep scrolling. All right. I'm not going to go through the SQL in depth, both because it's not my expertise and more importantly, because we've only got about 7 minutes. I am going to assume, for example, that each of these is correct and not take points off for it. I'm still seeing spelling and grammar errors. That's jumping out at me. And more importantly, I'm looking for, are these interesting? Are they insightful? Are they valuable? So delegatee counts. So far, this isn't telling me all that much, except that the methodology, it's helpful here, but I'm not seeing a whole lot about the distinction between one or two versus many. That's worth something, but I'm also not done. So this is just the context tab in the dashboard. Let's keep going. Okay, so this, for me, is an example of something. Let's scroll up for a sec, Marina. This is where I would be on the lookout, like number of participated. I don't know if you want to click into that and see. It looks like the far right, those two are duplicates. Let's find out. Overall votes, delegate, relegate, user, participate in 86 proposals. Okay. That's just greater than 2. Okay, and go back for me. And then what was the one above it? Or sorry, the one below it, my bad. I want to know if they see a number of participants. I want to know if that's a duplicate. So that's one where if I were loading it, I would spend a little bit more time looking into what the differences were. Let's scroll down for now. I'm not going to take points off of that because I'm not spending the time. I would be interested here. Okay, regular. Now we're getting into some of the meat of it. Daily voter and vote count, cumulative voting power. Yeah, Popmo, that's a better way to sort of say what I'm saying. Like, I wouldn't take points off for a whole bunch of blocks, even if they're different, but it is not necessarily a best practice. So I'm not deducting points because they are showing all different information here. I would consider taking points off. Scroll up for me, Marina, for a sec. Not all the way up. Scroll down. A little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit. Okay, price effect on regular users' votes, price effect on delegates' votes. These are basically identical visualization. Not basically, they are identical visualizations. There's no reason to include them twice. This is a minor nitpick. I do actually think that it's interesting to look at the correlation between price and delegates. I also think that the conclusion here is, okay, it doesn't affect things all that much. Let's keep going. Let's pause again. Same thing here. Transaction fee effect on delegate votes, transaction fee effect on regular user votes. We don't need that visualization twice. It's just taking up space. There's a more efficient way to do this. So I'm not keeping a hard count here of number of visualizations, but it's going to blow way past 20. So I'd be taking some points off for that, but not a ton of points. We'll keep going. All right, let's pause. Let's pause here. Again, and here again, we've got delegates and regular users, daily gas. Can you scroll up just a tiny bit for me, Marina? Daily fee, regular users, daily fee. So the big problem I'm running into as I grade this, we're trying to establish a comparison between delegates and regular users. I do think that's interesting. I think it's valuable. I think this mode of presenting this data is not particularly effective. We're showing pretty much exactly the same thing side by side over and over again. If I were a reviewer reviewing a mind-numbing amount of these, it would make it really difficult for me to stay engaged. So as I'd be taking off points, I haven't been able to deduct enough points for number of charts yet, or for spelling or grammar mistakes to get down into the 80s. But if this were to keep occurring, I probably would. So let's keep scrolling. Yet we run into the same problem again. We're just showing exactly the same information for delegates and regular voters. It's not an effective way to get your point across. Let's scroll up and take a quick look at the last tab. Okay, so here again, I might be taking points off for visualization here. Not a ton, but having just blocks of single numbers really hits you and it doesn't get your information across effectively. If I were providing feedback here, it's just really difficult to look at this and extract anything valuable. I would be cutting down on the information here. Even something like voting power delegates and voting power regular users, those are different enough. And it's actually, a fairly important conclusion to understand where voting power really lies. That's a case where showing a side-by-side graph might be really impactful. But showing the big numbers, I would probably knock off 5 points for visualization here, just because this is obscuring rather than actually showing valuable information. Let's keep scrolling. Let me read the comments here. Not too far. I want to actually read what he's writing as well. The difference between two groups' participation also narrowed down under the effect of a significant decrease in regular voters' participation. I have no idea how to read that. Time frame helps. Okay, limiting by time, but it doesn't totally limit voting power. That makes sense. But that to me would be a major. I have to read that. I would have to read that several times. I'm going to move past it in the interest of time. I don't know what that's actually saying. That to me would be you're losing points because it's really not clear what the implication is. And the same thing with delegates voted on 2 more proposals than regular voters. Okay, that doesn't really tell me anything. 56 versus 54, that's not an insight. That doesn't tell me, that's telling me what, but you've already told me what in these large number charts. Tell me why that matters, why that's interesting. I would be knocking some points off for insight here. Here again, we're seeing, this is slightly better. Cumulative vote count over time. Like, I actually think just one of these charts would do the job again. Like, you don't need both of them. But having vote count, voter count, and cumulative vote count, that actually sort of addresses some of the problems I was talking about before. I would love to see more like sort of compilation charts wherever possible. Yeah. Potmo, like I said earlier in the call, 20, some people argue for more, some people argue for less. Governance should be analyzed on a proposal basis instead of a timely manner. That's a good one. I'd have to think about that. This is a tough thing. I look at this and I don't really see the trends. This is where if I had more time, I would dive into it. I would end up marking this dashboard, and I wasn't keeping points on a scratch pad. I think this would end up like right on the line, probably 75-ish between good and stellar. For me, it falls on the good. I suspect going into it in more depth, the writing here is not making it really easy for me to take away the insights. And I think the conclusion probably is, and again, I'd want to really spend more time to be sure, that it's hard to see trends over time. Except for this, early this year, you see that big spike. It's not clear to me that looking at it over time produces any meaningful insights. It's interesting, but I think this would probably end up in the good bucket and not the stellar bucket. And one of the pieces of feedback would be, it's hard for me to understand why this is significant or why this is important. Let's keep scrolling and see if there's any conclusions here. Cool, Ghost. Some of this stuff is good as a baseline for sure, just to set the standard. But here again, like, we've got exactly the same information. At this point, it's just chart spam, so I'd be knocking off points. It's detracting from your point rather than making the point easy to find. Let's go back to the original point of view. Hawk, in case you missed this, we are looking at potentially paying per review instead of per hour. And we are also looking at, although maybe not immediately, doing a secondary bucket for people who are chosen or networks who are chosen to review good and stellar submissions. So there may be a secondary review for the cream of the crop. We're hoping that that is more fun to review, gets paid more, and enables more feedback on those submissions. Additionally, we will choose different networks based on performance. And so if you have a network, a group of analysts that's performing really well, for you, it might be Solar Scored. If your group of Solar Scored or Solar Core analysts is doing a good job reviewing Solana submissions, I'll just go to you more and more often. So the better review you review, the more chances you'll have to review, and the more you'll get paid. So recap, hoping to pay per submission, hoping to have secondary reviews for elite reviewers to review elite submissions, and then networks that form that review and do a good job. I'll tap those networks more often to be the reviewers, and you'll get more chances to get paid. Yes, absolutely, you can provide feedback on reviews. I did not have enough time. I did not leave myself enough time to do the dashboard in depth. If I had more time, I would like to go back and really look for those insights and figure out, what is this actually telling me, or is the summary dashboard? I still don't know, spending 10 minutes on it, what the key takeaways were. There were some interesting data visualizations to look at participation over time. It basically says, like, regular users and delegatees, there's not that many differences between the two. That's, good to know. I don't think it rises to the level of a stellar submission. As I said, when we do these, I'll try to leave a full half hour so that we can actually dive in depth. But bottom line, I would probably, if I were keeping a scratch pad between professionalism, between chart flood, and ability to find insights, this for me rates as a good but not a stellar. Pablo, I'm not going to answer that. I want people to try doing it in 2 minutes. I want them to try doing it in 20 minutes. I want to see if the 20 minutes produces better submissions. If we're paying per submission, you get paid a lot less. And so maybe that will nudge you down to 10 minutes or to 5. I also want to see if people are only spending 5 minutes. Maybe that's not enough time per submission. I suspect it probably won't be. The market is going to answer that. So we're going to have to run it a few times and see who's trying to just game the system. We're going to find out what level of time is necessary to triage things in the right buckets. And then we'll find out, and again, the market is going to be solving this, because if you're skimming it, we'll find out you won't get chosen to review. This is something that's only going to solve itself after people go through it. yes, absolutely, you should create reviewer networks on specific niches, and we will pick you for those niches. I mentioned Solana. If you've got a Solana reviewer network, we'll pick you for Solana questions. If it's for DeFi, we'll tap you for DeFi questions. We want those networks to form. We want people to specialize. Suppose someone made a mistake. Let me just make a note to Jimmy that I'm going to be late. Someone made a mistake calculating the volume and multiple. In such a scenario, what would be the appropriate method to decrease accuracy? You hit it both times, Mo. That's a great question. You lose your 10 points. Oh, I see what you're saying. I would take the points off basically up to the maximum at that point. If you're wrong on all 4 charts, you'd be losing the full value, the full 25 points for accuracy. Network can establish its own grading methodology. Absolutely. I expect this to be controversial. We'll have the controversy. Let's debate it. A network is more than welcome to say, we think your rubric sucks, GJ. Here's ours. It's better. We're using that. If the results are we still expect people to grade based on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 submission. How you get there can be different. But if you're getting the same results or better results in terms of bracketing submissions into 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, that's totally fine. The question is going to be, are you doing that? And then is it indefensible? We've provided a standard. We would like everyone to use the standard. The app requires you to use the 1 through 5. That's non-negotiable. The deducting points, we cannot force everyone to use that. We recommend that as a baseline, but if you truly believe you have a better methodology that's going to lead to more accurately bracketing submissions into what is truly good and truly stellar and truly spam, truly bad, truly average, use it. We'll try it. And based on the data, we'll either say, yeah, your methodology is better. We're going to have you review more often, or no, that didn't produce high quality results. So it's not that we're never going to pick you, but it's going to be a little time before we give you a second crack at it. I got to go. I'm 6 minutes late for Jimmy. So we will do this again in a couple weeks. There's a lot more here for sure for us to dig into. We welcome your feedback. It's not perfect. We think it can be better. Your feedback will help us get there.
Thanks, DJ, for running this call. Thanks for sharing the rubric. And thanks, everyone, for being here. Yes, it is recorded. We will share the recording. I'm going to repost the Xmetric link because y'all are real ones and you've been here for more than an hour. So we want to send you some Xmetric for sticking around. Here's the link. I'm going to close shortly after the call. As DJ said, we're going to do these more regularly, probably every other week. So stay tuned. And we'll see you soon. Thanks all. Have a great day. Bye. Mo, you still get Xmetric. We still love you even though you just came in the last 10 minutes. Thanks all. See you.